and welcome to Push Your Glasses Up. I'm Mikey.
And I'm Reena, and hi.
Hello.
I feel like it's been a minute.
Well, for us, yeah.
That's
I did
just
two.
for
I
us.
did 2 episodes last week. But
I was like, wait a second.
yeah. Did the first episode of Cram Sesh. If you are so inclined to go watch it, and listen to it, it's about Halloween 1978 and 2018, and then I did a fresh episode on the new Halloween Kills. So go watch and listen to those, please, because it is one of the few, only the second time that we've had a guest on the show, and it was cool to have Spencer here. So, but today we are here to talk about Dune, and not the David Lynch one, the fresh new Denis Villeneuve one, which going into it, I am automatically already biased because I would say I am more in his boat than Nolan's on a hype meter anytime he has a new movie coming out at this point. So, but yeah, how did you end up enjoying this new Sand movie?
So I have a little bit of an advantage because my roommate, Jonathan, is a huge sci-fi book fan. And so he's read all the Dune books. And when that like extended trailer came out, he went through it with me and like explained everything, which made this movie so much better for me because I had
It
some
contextualized
idea.
it.
Yeah, like I think I really needed that. And not like I needed to read the whole thing, but just his synopsis like really helped in understanding Paul's frame of mind. But man, I mean, I watched it on HBO Max
That's how I
because I
watched
didn't have
it
time
too.
to go. But I'm definitely going to go back and see it into the theater because man, how stunning was that film? Beautiful.
It's beautiful, as one of his movies will always be. I plan on going to watch it in IMAX because it is actually expanded for IMAX.
Oh yeah.
And actually filmed for the full 143, so that's pretty fantastic. You touched on something that I think. So I love this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think this movie has a problem though, and it
Okay.
is none of the marketing ever said part one.
Yeah, I mean,
And
any of the book readers knew that everything wasn't going to be crammed
right,
into one movie.
but as much as it's one of the most famous sci-fi stories of all time, I don't think that's the majority of moviegoers for this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think that this is just, someone made a big budget sci-fi movie, let's go see it. No posters or anything said part one. You didn't see that until the first, like the actual title card in the movie. Excuse me. And then it ends on a kind of anticlimactic moment. And it's a very interesting moment if you know where things are going. But like, this is a long first act, which plays well if you know what the other acts like the trajectory towards those other things. I think for people who may not have any context about this other than let's go see the big new movie, I think it could let people down. But for me, who has that context, it was great. So it's a weird thing.
Anyone who's a big Zendaya fan is probably going to be let down as well, since she's in it for about 3 minutes.
they gave her the Robin Williams genie treatment and and used her to sell it a little bit. But yeah, it's really interesting to see. Like the David Lynch movie is what it is. This actually shows you why this is sort of the progenitor to Star Wars and Game of Thrones and like all of these other sci-fi and fantasy things. That like you even more than like it has the houses, and that's why I say more so the Game of Thrones stuff. But like for Star Wars, it's like there is a male chosen one named after a biblical person, after an apostle, who is on a desert planet, who like it. There is an Imperial police, which would be the Stormtroopers. It's like
they even wear white.
Yeah, and so it's for people who don't realize that this came out first. I think a lot of people will be like, well, it just rips off Star Wars and it rips off Game of Thrones, but like
even like kind of looking at the spaceships, especially with the angles, not the dragonfly ones, but like the more boxy ones, very kind of look like something that would come out of Star Wars, especially like in terms of Imperial ships.
Kind of for those, for me, those scream Villeneuve to, like, if you look at Arrival and even the like modified cars in Blade Runner 2049, there's still like there's a flow chart you can see with the design for that stuff, which is probably his inspiration coming through. But yeah,
I feel like more of the organic spaceships shapes kind of reminded me more of Arrival, because that was it was a little more flowy. But I know I see your point, like, exactly, and I'm very grateful for Jonathan for breaking down that trailer for me, because but one of the things I really liked that they did, I think, really well was establish relationships, like early on.
These are character
with House Atreides, like Oscar Isaac was incredible. Like it was so good, and I am like in love with Jessica. I would like to be a space witch. That is my new ambition.
Oh, that was my other Star Wars thing. I was like, oh, okay, there's Dathomir. The witches of Dathomir are all coming through. Mm-hmm. But this is very much a plop you into the story as it's happening, and you just have to kind of attach yourself to the characters, because it's not very handholdy, as much as it's very obviously trying to convey the information to you as best it can. It's such a dense universe that's like existing already as you go into it, that you kind of have to, like, it expects you to pay attention, and that can be a difficult thing for the general audience. But like, if you're in it, I don't think it's really a problem. But for the same people that like may be left with like that was kind of a weird taper off ending, instead of like, that same person may have the same issue of like just taking in this huge dump of information that's going on. But yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, but I think they did, like, they had to strike the balance, right? You can't ignore all the detail from the book and like kind of skimp on like the details, but you can't like oversaturate everything. So like it would just be too much, and I think that's where previous Dune films have suffered, by trying to cram everything in and trying to explain this very complex world. I like how upfront they were about the political landscape. Mm-hmm. When they kick out House, like the Harkonnens, and they're like, bye, and they're like, House Atreides is all of a sudden going to come in and inherit this like massive like spice fortune, and they're like, this is not like, which this is not a good, like,
which they don't even want.
Thing. No, they're like, all right, we're gonna do it.
We're being set up to fail, and then it turns out they're being set up to die. Yeah,
but they kind of like, they knew, they had that insight, like, going in. They're like, this is dangerous. This is a power play from the Emperor. This is not like a gift. When people are like, oh my God, why are they just giving them this? And they're like, and it's really. We didn't realize how far it went at first. Yeah. But it was like, okay, these guys have been here for 80 years. And all of a sudden they're like, bye. And the Emperor is like decreeing to this other house, like, he built, like, we haven't seen the Emperor or the Imperial. We've seen the Imperial forces a little bit, but we don't know that dynamic. But I liked how they did a good job of establishing relationships, and then the political landscape that like kind of brought all the characters together in a way that made sense.
Yeah, that's the political stuff in this is where it gets really like, you get the Shakespearean kind of background story going on with it, whereas the front is obviously more religious influenced in the foreground with the Chosen One and stuff like that. and more specifically, like there is some Christianity, there's some Greek, obviously with their name, um, but there's a lot of Islam in here, which
Mm-hmm.
is it's going to be interesting to see how this gets handled going forward, because it is obviously a white POV coming on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting to me. Where we're at right now is a pretty standardized like generalization of the chosen one archetype, and so as we go a little deeper, it's I have faith that it can be handled fine,
Mm-hmm.
but it is tread lightly kind of situation, because it could be, there is stuff to even criticize in the books, even though it is coming from a good place with what the story is trying to tell. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Well, I
it'll
mean,
be interesting.
I can't wait to learn more about the Fremen because they are fucking badass.
Yeah.
We've only seen like this much of them, and like knowing that one, there's so many more of them than we even know, and that reveal at the end that they can actually ride on Shai Hulud, and travel
Which,
that way.
by the way, is this when you finally found out what that band name is?
No, I did know it was from Dune.
Okay.
But just that we start off believing that the sandworms were dangerous and they had to avoid them, and that the city's fortified against them. But really, the Fremen like have a relationship with them and the desert itself. And I think you're talking about Islam, but I think there's a lot of like indigenous peoples kind of deal, especially with coming in here to the land and taking your resources. Okay,
Oh yeah,
bye.
yeah. That is the sort of geopolitical aspect of it. It is very easily like they're coming for oil. Like you can just say that.
They're
But
coming for
yeah.
oil. They're coming for resources. But on that note, I think having Jason Momoa as Duncan Idaho and going in and talking to the Fremen like Mr. like Hawaii like activist was like a really great casting anyway.
And
Of
this
like
is
all people.
honestly, for as I want to say kind of minimally as he is used here, because he's used to great effect, but like he's somewhat, I would say, in a third of the movie. This is probably his best performance to date. Like I honestly I think this is way better than what he does for Aquaman, because for Aquaman he's just being himself, which is fine. But
Mm-hmm.
like here, I feel like he's actually playing a character, which is sort of rare for him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because for the most part, I do think most people just want to say like, "Hey, just be you." That's
Yep.
what people are coming in for. Um, which is fine for a lot of stuff, but for this, I do appreciate that he's kind of playing a role.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah,
And like there's a lot of complexities in these roles with the like without being heavy-handed. Like his loyalty is he's not like I pledge my loyalty like this is my family. Like the way that he shows that he's integrated into this royal family and loyal to them in a way that feels like organic and not forced and not like they're hitting you over the head with it.
yeah. I mean, he's more mentor than just like a combat trainer, which is sort of
Like
how he's
yeah,
introduced, sort of, even though he's not the one that ends up doing the training that day that we see him. But yeah.
almost like he's like a big brother to Paul.
Yes, yeah.
And then on the flip side, you have Gurney, who's a lot more like heavy-handed, and Josh Brolin totally looks like my stepdad, so that's always like weird for me. I was like, all right,
He's like the hard
but
ass teacher, though.
yeah,
Yeah.
but like I don't know, I like that everyone really had like Paul's best interests in mind, and like truly did like people really believe in House Atreides, like they
Yeah,
just do, and like
and
they're
it's
good people.
and it's coming from different angles too, right? Because like
Mm-hmm.
Jessica has a much different like idea of what's best for him.
Mm-hmm.
It's obviously a little bit more leaning into her ways of things. And for his father's side, it's more of like he clearly wants him to continue the lineage of being in charge. but is still supportive if he's not, which was nice. Like it's not the classic like, no, you are my son, you better do this, you have to do
This
this.
is your duty. Like,
because you need to convey like Paul would still want to be around. Like there needs to be a purpose behind him still wanting to be with his family as opposed to like resenting them and not wanting to be there when later things happen, like that death, that like it still needs to mean something. So yeah.
And I think it's also to set up, like, this house is being set up to fail, but like the reason that they are in power is because they are good to people, right? They don't rule with like fire and brimstone. Like, when they're talking about taking over, their whole idea is like, we're going to work with the Fremen. Like, we're not going to just like kick them out. We're not going to do that. We're going to form an alliance. They're all about partnership. They're very diplomatic. And that's very threatening to the Emperor. But I like how we kind of saw that structure through the family and their relationships with like all the other characters.
Yeah.
Versus them being like, everyone in the galaxy likes them. And, they didn't like, that wasn't like explicit.
Yeah. And so did you catch when they were talking about how Jessica had a son instead of a daughter? I can't recall the specifics if they mentioned who that daughter was actually supposed to be with. Was it not in the movie? Because it's something that I can't remember if I'm confusing with my knowledge of all of that or not.
No, they didn't. I don't think they said it. I think they were just like, yo, you were told to only have daughters, and you had a son, and now you have to deal with this. And because she is the one who thinks that he's going to be,
right,
for lack of a better term, the prince who was promised. But they didn't mention like anything else. Wait, no, but she is pregnant. He knows she's pregnant. Paul knows she's pregnant.
But I'm not talking about for the future. I'm talking about like before Paul.
No. They haven't really said anything. They haven't really gone into. Not that I recall them going into anything.
Then I'm probably just bringing in my own knowledge on that, which is why I asked, because I didn't want to go into it with the spoilers that could come in the future. But yeah, that stuff gets very, very interesting, because the one thing I will say is we met that person that she was supposed to be a concubine for in this movie. So it gets wacky. Not that Dune in general isn't wacky, as it is our actual universe 11,000 years in the future. But yeah, it's I want to know if they are actually going to like go forward with some of that stuff that I do know, but it could be too much to throw into what they're trying to get across, so it could just make things a little too confusing with the like inter-house kind of structural stuff. So yeah.
But talking about Paul and like the connection to like Luke Skywalker, both of them are kind of whiny bitches when really, I mean, Paul even more so than I think Luke, when one, you're royalty and you have magic powers. Like, yo, bro, get it together. I know dreams are scary, but like you got both things.
To be fair though,
I know he's like tripping balls the whole time.
Well, there's that. But on top of that, just in general, teenagers, man. Like we weren't the easiest to handle teenagers either, I would say.
Yeah, but if like my mom was teaching me magic, I would be like psyched on it. And well, I mean, I did start practicing witchcraft in 1997. But anyway, my mom did sort of teach me magic. But I was like all about that life. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I want to be a space witch.
Well, what's funny too is I would say this is kind of a little more. Paul is a little more Anakin than Luke. Honestly, he's a little more volatile. He's a little more prone to speak his mind angrily, as opposed to just being like wanting to go get power converters. So yeah, he's yeah. I think in the naming structure it's Luke, but in the sort of archetype structure he's more Anakin. But yeah.
But yeah, I'm interested. I mean, I thought they handled talking about tripping balls the whole time. I thought they did a really nice job with the spice like hallucinations that he has without making them like, because I know there's a lot of the book is him being just like out of his mind and using it as like really good foreshadowing and like adding color to the story without it like being very confusing.
Yeah.
Because I know that's a, as Jonathan has told me, that's a lot of the book is him having like spice trips. Just be like,
yeah.
All right.
And that's, yeah, it's, I appreciate that, like, it's easily enough figured out that, like, he's seeing this person in his dreams and he, like, eventually meets up with that. And then it has to just figure out when the dream part that he was coming across is actually, like, when that matches up with what's happening in real time. So
like what's a dream and what's a premonition? Sometimes things get, when she asked him, you know, are your dreams coming true? And he's like, not exactly, which means there's kind of part dream and like part premonition at this point in his journey. But
in his early power scaling. Yeah. Yeah, my biggest issue is, and I think that this is not even just on the terms of the people I was talking about with, like, that may not have the context for it. I honestly think that it probably would have been better off to cut the movie when they meet up with the Fremen, like after getting chased by the Shai Hulud, and just cut there when they meet, as opposed to then doing a fight and then walking off into the distance. Like, it just would have been a better cliffhanger to me for a part 2, because then you can just start out with a fight scene in part 2 as well. Like, it's just an exciting way to start.
I think they really just wanted people to see them ride the Sandworm. Like, I really think that's, but I guess if you're not a book reader though, if you're not a book reader and you're like, you see these giant things that just swallow everything and you spend the whole movie running from them, and all of a sudden you realize that these people like literally work with them.
Yeah.
Then it kind of frames the Fremen in even like a different light. And then I think I agree with like the cut in that case, because I don't know, if you like creatures,
if you don't
that was cool.
If you don't know anything that's going on and you just see somebody suddenly riding one, you're like, what the fuck? Like, it leaves you more of like, in my head it would leave you more that way than like, yeah, let's go part 2. I want to see how they do that. Like, it just comes off as more weird than anything else. I don't know.
I like creature stuff. I thought they actually did a really nice job with the Shai Hulud. Like,
yeah,
it's big and menacing and interesting, and it does kind of look like a butthole, but like, I mean,
it's either gonna look like a butthole or a dick. So
yeah, that's just that's nature. That's nature for you.
And 15 movies from now, one will have a human head with a couple arms coming out of it. So,
like, as long as like they don't, I mean, you know, previously my experience with Sandworms was from Beetlejuice. It's a different interpretation, but
very clearly takes it from somewhere. So
yep. So yeah,
and
I don't know.
What's funny about that too is Beetlejuice was only a couple years after the David Lynch movie. So, like, at the time, there were sandworms in everything, apparently. As opposed to just, like, here. And then, like, not that long after Beetlejuice was Tremors. And then, not, like, so there's a ton of stuff that's just, like, wild. Like, it's weird. Like, Tremors is probably the most direct version of referencing like the sandworms and stuff, but then they also like do the weird walk thing.
Oh yeah, so you don't like disturb them.
Yeah, and they straight up run to a rock in order to like be safe from it. So
like, we're gonna take this one,
but those are graboids. Those are officially graboids, legally distinct.
Yes, I see. of course. I was disappointed that there was not Patrick Stewart holding a puppy in this particular instance. That would have been a nice throwback to the David Lynch film.
It seems like an expensive cameo. Maybe they will have Sting come back though to do the like mostly nude but wearing Dr. Manhattan's sensor bikini. You know.
Yeah. You know, just pay tribute to the original film.
and Watchmen, I guess. Yeah.
But no, I actually really enjoyed it, and some people have been saying it felt long, but I was able to like get through it.
Oh yeah, I didn't.
And I have no attention span whatsoever. I mean, I thought the world building was great. I thought visually it was amazing, and like the story, even for someone who only had a crash course from their roommate, wasn't hard to follow for me.
Yeah. I think it is a little bit weirdly structured because it is basically the first act of something. So it doesn't have its own 3-act structure kind of.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like a 4-act structure in this movie. And so I can see why that would feel a little bit long, because you just have a natural like that's the 3 acts that's where I feel like it should end, sort of organic response to a movie that's going on. But yeah, for me, having context and knowing sort of how Villeneuve makes his movies, it didn't hurt it for me at all, because I just, Blade Runner 2049 especially almost has like 5 acts to it. And it's like, that is one of my favorite movies of all time. I love that movie more than the original Blade Runner. So it's not that surprising to me. I kind of knew what I was in for. So I do feel like for some people though, that could make it feel longer. That could kind of stretch things out a little bit too much. But for me, it's 2 hours and 35 minutes, and it felt like a flat 2 hours. So yeah.
I mean, we didn't even talk about the Harkonnens and how amazing the Baron looked.
Stellan Skarsgård.
Like, oh my! But like
you wouldn't fucking know.
The slow float though is just so creepy. Like that whole like throne room scene, and
he's just one of the humans from WALL-E. It's fine.
Yeah, that happens over time when you're in space for that long.
Yeah, well, and that's one of those like classic usage of like opulence and like overindulgence for somebody that's in power. And it's, as much as it's sort of a stereotype at this point, like it works so well in a setting like this. Like when he's going through the, for lack of a better term, back to tank scene, where he is, getting medical treatment. Just the design of that like oily, like it looked like he was in balsamic and oil. Like, so it was just I just love the like brutalist design that Villeneuve does for sci-fi stuff. It's just so simple. It lets everything sort of live on screen and display itself as what it needs to be, as opposed to needing to tell people. Like I said already, though, that is, it has its trade-offs for new people, but like if you're already in, you are just able to soak in the worlds through design, and I absolutely love that aspect.
Or like how creepy but also kind of pathetic it looked when he was like stuck to the ceiling like a bat.
Yep.
Because he was avoiding like the chemical, but like all of a sudden he was like, instead of being this like giant presence, he was like a little speck, like
cowering in a corner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like, oh no, and like in that instance he looked so small.
Yeah.
We know that's not true. I don't know. I thought how they did the Harkonnens was like really, really cool, and obviously like Dave Bautista in his role of just being angry spaceman. Always angry
intimidating.
Space warrior.
This is quiet angry space warrior. He's not as intense with the emotions in this. He's a little more willing to listen. But yeah, it just, I think they do a really good job of differentiating through visuals. So you know, like, granted, when everybody's fighting and everyone's wearing roughly the same color and everyone has masks on, that can get a little bit hard to follow when they bring in like the Imperial cops. But as far as differentiating the different factions of houses and stuff, I think they did a really good job of just giving everyone their sort of similar world, but different vibes and looks to them. So it does allow you to just be like, okay, I know where you're from. I know where you're from. Because that's the thing, is it's a lot of information, and you need to get that across to somebody of like a clear differential of different groups.
I wonder what the release schedule is going to be for the rest of them.
Well,
because they knew, because it's not like they
next up is the show.
Oh, there's a show. I didn't know about a show.
It's about who you want it to be about.
It's
about the witches. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, it's.
I was like, Timothée Chalamet. Like, what?
Yeah. No. I would assume that that's going to fully come out before, maybe even before they start filming the next part of the movies. But
well, I wonder, because they do so many like flash forwards through Paul's visions, if they're gonna do like the.
I'm sure they have some footage that's already.
Yeah. Like, you know, kind of a Lord of the Rings set the good template of like film a bunch of stuff at once.
Yes.
Get everything kind of done.
But I'm pretty sure this one movie cost almost as much as all three of those. So
probably.
So Warner Brothers was a little more trepidatious about doing like multiple parts before knowing there's going to be some success to it. I think it was sort of obvious there would be some success to it, but you know, the last couple movies from Villeneuve didn't do tremendously at the box office. And it's a very serious, dry sci-fi story as opposed to like a Star Wars or even where Star Trek is now.
It's literally dry. It's in a desert.
Yes. And so it's, I understand why they did that, but at the same time, don't let him put part 1 in the title card of the movie if you're worried about it, because then you're promising stuff to people and people will be pissed. So yeah, unless,
especially,
I mean, I guess you could say like that show could be part 2 if you wanted, but like it's still, then you're getting a little more confusing because it's not a direct story you're telling with the parts. And yeah.
No, I'm excited for the rest of it.
Yeah,
I'm excited for my roommate to see it, because Jonathan hasn't seen it yet. Because we're waiting to see it like in the theater with like his best friend Tim.
Yeah.
So, and then I think Matthew and I are going to see it when he gets back from vacation. But definitely, I mean, I'm glad that like I saw it up front so we could talk about it. But definitely worth seeing in IMAX for sure.
Oh yeah, because like I'm watching it on a 4K monitor. It looked great, but it's
like that's
still,
not like it's not a marketing ploy. Like it really is going to look amazing in the theater.
Yeah. When it's actually shut, because even like No Time to Die was released in IMAX, but it was a modified, not like true IMAX, and like this is actually shot for IMAX, so it's going to look amazing as long as you're similar to me, where it doesn't bug you where suddenly it's a big square and then it goes back to a tighter crop vertically. So
and bring it in.
Yeah. But yeah, I loved this movie. I think it has an uphill battle with a certain audience, but if you're willing to dive in and like you were able to get into Game of Thrones and you like Star Wars and stuff, I think you'll definitely be able to get into this movie. So
You know what they should do?
Hopefully
Like
soon.
Game of Thrones put together a website right when the shows like first season came out that explained the houses and the relationships, like kind of
an
like a high
encyclopedic.
level.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like I think that would be immensely helpful for getting audiences like before the other movies come out and explaining the dynamics without somebody having to read through all of the source material, because it can be a little heavy, and it is. These are not like quick reads. It's a lot of information.
Yeah, it's dense.
Hopefully they put together something like that for the more
Maybe.
casual sci-fi fan.
But maybe they're also like, whatever, there's already Wikipedia. So I don't know.
Yeah. But okay, to that point, I mean, it's worth a Wikipedia. It's worth just
absolutely.
get some basic context. I had like this much and it made it that much better for me.
Yeah. When you see a very simple diagram of like how the houses are sort of posed against each other, then it all sort of comes clear at that point. So yeah. Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, we like Dune.
We like Dune.
Official. But yeah, we'll be back soon-ish.
We have a lot coming up.
We have a lot coming up. The next thing we're going to cover, I think, is Eternals.
And that's actually going to be our anniversary episode, too.
It's also going to be a little delayed because I am going to be in Disney World or at Disney World. But yeah, so I'm going to be seeing it down there, and then we're going to record it as soon as I get back. So it'll get up by the end of the following week of its release. But then we got a lot of stuff coming up.
Yeah, we have a ton of stuff because we're doing more cram schools. We get a bunch of movies. Cram Sash. Then we have cram school is like definitely a thing in anime, so don't get mad at me. But yeah, and then there's a bunch of stuff coming out because we're getting into that holiday movie time.
Yeah, we have, with Ghostbusters Afterlife coming up, we're going to do Cram Sesh for 1 and 2. We're not going to do 2016 because it doesn't affect this canon. I still like that movie.
Mm-hmm. We're not talking shit about that movie. We like that movie.
We are going to be doing 3 episodes of Cram Sesh for Spider-Man. Going into No Way Home. We are doing an episode for the Raimi movies, an episode for the Amazing Spider-Man movies, and an episode for the MCU movies. And then we are also going to do a Cram Sesh for the Matrix trilogy going into Matrix Resurrections. So we're going to have plenty of stuff going on. That's also, by the time that's happening, that's when like Book of Boba Fett starts coming out and stuff. So we'll have a lot going on soon enough. But until Eternals, maybe, I guess, we'll see you soon.
Go read Wikipedia on Dune.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.